Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gaming with me, Tony Mo, and today we're going to be talking about Rainbow Six Siege and how it redefined the Rainbow Six franchise for the better. We'll also talk a little bit about the future of the franchise, what I would like to see moving forward with Rainbow Six. A lot of that very much revolving around the things that were done inside of Siege and how, like I said, I think it set the precedent for future Rainbow Six games to be absolutely kick-ass. Because when we really compare Siege, I guess this is a good place to start. When we really compare Siege to Vegas, they're completely different games. And I'm not just talking about the fact that Siege is more focused on multiplayer. I'm talking about the core gameplay design elements, the core mechanics. They've completely evolved when you compare Siege to Vegas. And I think pretty much in all instances, for the better. There are things that Vegas did really well that we never really got to see done or redefined inside of Siege, simply because of its lack of an actual proper campaign. Specifically when I talk about the AI that was included in Vegas, I think the AI to date inside of Vegas 1 and 2 was so well done. The ability to actually stack people on a door and mark them, it was like making real-time chess moves with your tactical teammates, being able to execute these awesome breach and clears. That is something I would really love to see return in any future Rainbow entries if they finally do a campaign, whether it's co-op or single player in a future Rainbow game. I think they really do need to look back to Vegas for some of those mechanics, but I think the core of what has been designed here in Siege is, to me, the proper way forward for Rainbow Six. So I'm trying to think where the best place to start. I mean, obviously, Siege is multiplayer. I really hope that in any future Rainbow game, we get Siege's multiplayer. I wholeheartedly believe that the multiplayer and the formula that exists inside of Siege is one that could last for decades. It reminds me so much of Counter-Strike. The fact that I can pick up Counter-Strike any day of the week, any time of the year, probably for the next 10 years, and it's always going to be just as rewarding and as satisfying as it was the first day I played it. That's exactly how I feel about Siege, and I was reminded of that just recently when I played Siege on stream for the first time in 2 months and had the exact same level of fun that I had the first, second, third, fourth, the month after Siege first came out. Like, that fun has not gone away. Siege is so well designed around rewarding player for moment-to-moment gameplay decisions. The core gunplay, the core mechanics themselves are incredibly satisfying. Something that I think Vegas never did that well. At least in the multiplayer department. Siege is obviously leaps and bounds ahead of anything that we had in terms of Rainbow Six multiplayer in the past. I always felt that Vegas, or I should say Vegas and previous Rainbow games, always struggled to find their place when it came to multiplayer. We had some instances where the series tried to do different things, Lockdown, which didn't go well, and a few other entries. A lot of people would look back at like Athena Sword and Black Arrow. If I'm even saying those right, there was a lot of crazy names for past Rainbow games, but for some of the best multiplayer that the franchise has. And I do agree that those games did a good job in the multiplayer department, but again, I think Siege is just way ahead of that, and rightfully so. It's developed way down the line, but I still think they could have absolutely screwed it up badly, and they didn't. They brought something to the table that I think can last moving forward, because it's just so well designed. It is, heavily reliant on individual player skill and map knowledge and skill knowledge and operator knowledge. These are the markings of a really great multiplayer experience. So I think, from this point on, they have Siege as a blueprint for multiplayer. Take the same thing, maybe improve some areas here and there, add new content, and honestly, I'd be 100% okay with that. I'd buy that in a heartbeat, because I know it would be good, because what is here in Siege is already really damn good. Now, when we go deeper and we talk about core gameplay, when we talk about character movement speed, weapon movement speed, cover systems, or a lack thereof cover systems, I think Siege also pushed the franchise forward in the best direction it's ever been. When we look back at Vegas and even previous Rainbow entries, those games came from a time period where developers tried to mentally tricked the player into thinking that the game was being more tactical or more realistic. We had really slow character movement speed, sluggish aiming controls, and Vegas even introduced the god-awful third-person cover system, which looked really cool and maybe felt really cool, but was actually terrible in design, and it was also rubbish at giving the player actual cover, especially when returning fire on the enemy. In multiplayer, single player, co-op, it didn't matter. It sucked across the board. But again, it pervaded a sense, a mental feeling, that connection to the player, that false element of, hey, this is tactical. The reality is it wasn't. Again, it was just really what they knew at that point in time. Siege blows all of that stuff away and says, hey, you can still have a character that moves at a reasonable pace. You can still give the player proper control over their firearm. You can still allow them to be quick and precise with their aiming. There are other gameplay facets in which we can instill actual tactical, slow, methodical thinking man's gameplay. And Siege did that through its destruction system, its level design, and its gameplay, its core gameplay and map design. Of course, the operators were also a big part of that. So it's lovely to play a Rainbow game where I can actually peek a corner, where I can rush in and be quick and fast in a situation where I need to be quick, fast, and decisive to help my team win. And it still has that tactical feel. Dare I say, it's the first time that the game is actually properly tactical and not, again, just being falsely tricking the player into feeling that they are being tactical and realistic. The big thing that Siege did, of course, we talk about the cover system, is they got rid of that entirely and they went with the leaning system, which is, if you want to actually talk about realism, tactical realism, no one puts their back up against the wall and then rotates a whole entire foot out into an opening to fire on an enemy. And guess what system did that? The third-person cover system in Vegas. That's exactly what that system did, and it was terrible. It was even worse in multiplayer. It was bad enough in single player when you would peek out of cover and you had this ridiculous animation, your guy's like throwing his whole body on top of cover or throwing his whole body into a hallway or a doorway, and he just gets blasted by the enemy. Like, it was atrocious. And when you tried to play Terrorist Hunt on realistic difficulty, oh god, it was a nightmare. Multiplayer was even worse then, though, because you're dealing with a real player, someone who's got a beat on you, who is just holding you down with their rifle, and your only opportunity to return fire is to expose your entire body or simply leave that area. The lean mechanic in Siege allows you to properly peek corners, to tilt your character through a toggle system to one angle or the other, back up, and get the tightest angle you possibly can to expose as little of your character model as possible while still being able to put rounds on target. That's the system you need. It seems really simple, right? And, I imagine that there was a point in the history of video games where people were like, the cover system is the way forward. Like, look how cool this looks. Animations. Sometimes you really need to go for function over form. And that's exactly the instance with getting rid of the third-person cover system in all facets of Rainbow Six games moving forward. Please do not let it return ever. I'll take my lean mechanic any day. It may seem old. The lean mechanic existed in games for the last 10 years. You know why? Because it works and because it makes sense. Siege did go a step further too, giving us the ability to go prone on our backs and actually lean around corners in that manner. I'd love to see them include more interesting first-person animations and scenarios like that so we can get even more accurate angles around corners, while of course still keeping it fair and still requiring us to expose some portion of our body. Now, this isn't so much something that only Siege did, because I do believe if we look back at Rainbow Six Vegas, they did actually do a lot of free map DLC here and there. There was a lot of maps that were added to the game free of charge for players. But Siege, obviously, spotlighting a really great design decision, or I should say a really great DLC plan would be the best way of putting it, which is something that undoubtedly will exist in any future Rainbow entry. And hopefully they look at Siege, they look at the successes that they've had with Siege in terms of how they've handled DLC, and they pretty much copy that. I'm super on board for this type of DLC system at this point. You don't charge the player for multiplayer maps, you don't charge them for anything that is an addition to the multiplayer experience. It's different to maybe one day sell an extra campaign for the single player, but when we're talking multiplayer, you're trying to build the community. You're trying to make sure that the community always exists in the exact same environment. And if you divide that community by charging them for DLC, you now have two separate communities. The community that chose to pay for the DLC and the community that chose not to pay for the DLC. Really silly. Seems like it should be common sense, yet we have games doing it left and right. Battlefield is notorious for it. Luckily, Siege did not take that route, and they have made a huge portion of their profits, all of their profits, in fact, from the sale of cosmetic items. And as you can see from the gameplay that you're seeing, I bought stuff. Almost all of my friends that I know who have played Siege had spent well over $20 at this point. You know, at the end of the day, the player, in most instances, and a lot of studies have shown this, end up spending more money than they would have if they were actually charged for direct map-based DLC. Cosmetic items sell better, and they sell more frequently than map DLC does, and at the same time, you prevent splitting your community. It's just, it works. You know, it's very much a copy-paste situation, in my opinion, moving forward. This works. If it isn't broke, don't fix it. It's as simple as that. So I hope they maintain a similar DLC policy moving forward with all entries and all potential entries in the Rainbow Six franchise. You know, I guess the one thing we can say that Siege didn't really do that I would love to see the next Rainbow Six game do is deliver a much more complete package. You know, Siege had Terrorist Hunt, we got the small situations, were basically tutorials for the game, which I do actually like the way they handled those, and then we had the multiplayer, which of course was the focus. Now, there was a good reason for this. The team, you know, coming off of the disaster that was Patriots, wanted to really focus on doing something different. And in order to do that, they needed to throw away any unnecessary development time that would have been spent on making a campaign, and I think that was a great design decision. But as I said, at this point, they have a blueprint for the multiplayer. So the next Rainbow Six game, I, as a fan, as a consumer, really want to see them deliver a more complete package. Give us a campaign, give us co-op, give us single player with AI teammates, you know, give us Terrorist Hunt, give us multiplayer, give us the complete works, much like Tom Clancy games have done so well in the past, you know, 10 years. His Blacklist, Ghost Recon. These are games that were all about content-rich packages. I want to see that for the next Rainbow. Very, very much so. And that's pretty much it, guys. You know, Siege, I think, as I said, and as I've talked about in this video, has been a great step forward for the franchise. I hope that the team, or whatever team that works on the next Rainbow, looks to Siege wholeheartedly, you know, as a blueprint for a lot of really great design decisions when they build the next Rainbow, if that ever happens. Fingers crossed. You know, to me, Siege was the rebirth of the franchise, and I very much hope that someone at Ubisoft recognizes that there are fans out there that want more of this, and that they have the potential to build a bigger game with a more complete package that it can appeal to a wider audience, one that doesn't just want multiplayer, but one that wants to experience a campaign with their friends or with AI. They can appeal to that larger audience, and the game can sell better than Siege did, and I think that would be absolutely fantastic. Let me know your thoughts, guys. What would you like to see in the next Rainbow Six? And if there are any elements of Siege that stand out to you as being truly redefining for the franchise, it can be the smallest of gameplay mechanics. Let me know down in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.